Hi, I want to welcome you to the Nurture Pod. My name is Iris Sullivan Dare, and I'm here with the beautiful Ginger Edwards. And we're so glad to have you here with us. This is our winter solstice edition. And the Nurture Pod is the place where we explore that kind of edge, that riparian zone between what is and the world of possibilities. And kind of which I think includes like the dream space and imagination space and just that world that we co-create together and just reinforcing that. How you
Yeah,
doing, Ginger?
I'm good actually. I am really excited for winter solstice. I love this particular moment in time, and I've learned a lot of, or maybe relearned a lot of new things about solstice as I thought about it this year. So I'm kind of excited to have a conversation with you about it. And everybody's listening, of course. And also just personally, like this is when I clock out pretty much until New Year's. Like mentally, like I know there are to-do lists, but recently I heard someone say, like, what's on your not to-do list? And I was like, oh, I
Oh,
like that. Because I was like, it's so funny. I want to create a not to-do list, but like, yeah, that's a flip around of the to-do, because it actually is way more efficient just to not do the thing. And their point was that most of the things we want to change are things we're doing. And we keep in the culture trying to be like, I should do yoga. I should, do that. And actually, if we just stop doing things, it's way
yes.
easier. It takes way less energy to just stop doing stuff. Just let it go. Just knock it off. And not replace it. Just create space. So this is the moment of the year. And I think
I have to
most
pause
oh,
because
oh
okay,
yeah.
no, she's good. I just looked over and the hag was climbing around on top of my altar and she's been peeing in
Ah.
inappropriate places. So I was having a
Oh,
small moment of panic, but she just jumped down. So we're
well,
good.
that would be some kind of omen, right? That your cat peed on your altar during the winter solstice broadcast. Hmm.
Sorry,
We
sorry.
would have to read that shape of that pee stain and be like, what does it mean? Um, yeah, cats for sure.
Sorry,
That's
I'm back.
okay. But that's yeah. So I just know that a lot of us are clocking out mentally. And if you haven't already, we are getting ready to like call it the holidays for the next couple of weeks. And I love that for America, because America is such a push hustle culture,
Yes.
and there is some permission. And I started at the solstice. I recommend everybody else to too. Like, just, here we go. It's the longest night of the year. Let's reclaim it and just extend that period all the way through to the new year.
When the
That's what
boys were little, um, we had this idea that we were not really going to get all dragged into the Christmas hoopla, blah, blah, blah. And so, and, plus, we're kind of witchy. So, like, we're like, well, we're going to celebrate the solstice, obviously. And so we're like, well, we can do like the 12 days of solstice because if you start in the solstice, New Year's is 12
yes.
days, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's perfect,
It is perfect.
and it did kind of work when they were really little, but once they had more interaction with the rest of the world, everybody and their brother always is asking kids about Santa, and it's like we weren't talking about Santa. They're like, "Who's Santa?" It's like, "Oh God," and then it's like
Weird hippie
they're little,
kids.
and then they're like, but just also like their friends know about Santa,
Right.
so we have to be like, "Oh God, I don't really want to lie to you," but anyway.
Yeah. Yep. Well, I mean, we can get into Santa. Santa's an
No.
interesting figure in this whole mythology. Um, because really what's been coming up for me is how interesting this moment of our we kind of do this thing where we talk about we're the bridge between what is and maybe what's coming next, or what could be. We know the more beautiful world our hearts know is possible kind of idea. Um, and I learned something really interesting. So I'm going to share another little interesting thing. I learned about Sagittarius, because we're also at the
Oh,
end of Sagittarius season. I'm a big Sag. I fully identify as a Sagittarius in so many aspects of my being. But I learned that Sagittarius is the archer, right? And we think about archery, but also the word arch is in the name of Sagittarius, and it is associated with arches of all kinds, bridges. And
oh,
so actually Sagittarius, and including rainbows, a lot. And if you look at your tarot decks, a
nice.
lot of times there will be rainbows on the cards that represent the sign of Sagittarius. And because it's got this connotation with arch, and rainbows are like the arches from heaven to the earth, or from the other world to the present world, or, you know, spirit bridges kind of. And so there's this arch, that a bridge that Sagittarius makes from Scorpio or Samhain to solstice. And I think that's really, I just realized that, because not that Sag starts right at Samhain, but it does end at solstice. And there's this like intermediate, really spacey kind of out of time bridge that Sag makes right in there, because between Halloween and solstice is this really
no man's land.
No man's land, like spiritually, as that the Celts would say, this is like a real liminal, like between the worlds time, and Sag kind of makes that bridge. So I thought that was just super interesting. I also live on Bridge Lane, and I love rainbows, so it kind of felt.
And this time of year for us here is extra rainbow saturation time of year.
It's like very rainbowy. And we've been, I don't know if you've noticed it, but like so many rainbows, like double rainbows over bridges. Because we also have a lot of bridges where we live, because there's a lot of
yes. There was, in fact, on within the last couple of weeks, we had to stop class at West Exchange because there was a double rainbow, like super, super dark, right outside the window. And their window looks straight at the Astoria Megler Bridge. So like, which is, you know, the huge, and so like there's this huge double rainbow. We just stopped everything and everyone just went, oh.
Yeah, as you should.
As you should. It was great. I mean, really, what else?
I've been tripping out on rainbows and what they are. That could be a whole nother episode. But like, you know, the frequency of light, the thing that becomes visible, it's always there. You know, we have light, and then all of a sudden this magical prism through a raindrop happens, and we get to see what the spectrum. It's so magical. Anyway, that's a little piece. So we're at this point of the end of the bridge of Sag, and we're going to enter Capricorn on solstice, so on December 21st this year. And there are just so many potent like symbols, I feel like, all around this holiday season. Like there's packed full, you know. And it's interesting that you started with this idea of like the 12 days of solstice, because each one of, you know, these, I mean, even the 12 days representing the 12 months, like we're in this review period, right? And and when we get to this place at solstice, I feel like we have this kind of integration moment of like, we've been through this weird liminal time at the end of the year where things kind of dissolve, and we let ourselves be like, oh, and we just had a crazy election. There's lots of things going on that are like, whoa. And now we're going to have to reform, you know, in after the solstice is over, and a new year will begin, a new cycle will begin. But first, the darkness, right? Just to honor this beautiful darkness. And so I just wanted to maybe throw it back to you before I keep talking about all that.
So I think it's interesting because one, like saying that, you know, it's like you usually take this time off. For most of my adult life, I have not been able to pause adequately during this time, even though my body was like, I want to pause. Like I think about the times that I was working while really sick, you know, and like, you know, just having like terrible head colds and be like, I have to keep working, you know, we're so short staffed. And so like this year, I realized, I think we talked about this last time, it's like, oh, I need to not do that winter market, even though I love it and I love the people. I mean, like, it's been a really positive market for me. But I'm like, it's not that I'm never going to do it again, but I'm like, I can't do it this year because I have no more push. I don't have any push available. And it was like, and I was going to have to, because I've been so pushed. I don't have anything really made. So it was going to have to be a truly heroic effort to get prepared for that market. And I'm like, I don't have it. It's not available. And so like recognizing that and looking at it. So anyway, so this, I just like,
say what a big nurture moment for you to recognize that. Yeah.
And so like Wednesday was like my last scheduled thing. And I actually had a thing that I was supposed to do today. And I realized yesterday, I'm like, I actually, I had stuff yesterday I was going to do. And I'm like, I don't think I can do it. And I was like, and then I realized yesterday, I'm like, I think I have to cancel the thing I was going to do on Friday. And
It's on your not to do list.
I just put a bunch of stuff from my to-do list to my not to-do list. And this is my last little thing. So yeah, on Wednesday I went up to Ocean Park, which is an hour from where I live. And I go there every week and spend time with these crazy kids that I love. And when I got up there this week and we were kind of starting our thing, and I was like, oh, I feel kind of weird. And then I realized I was getting tunnel vision. And
Oh.
I'm like, I think I might pass out. And I'm like, I think I need to get a drink of water. So like I went and got a drink of water and I was just like, whoa. And I'm like, whoa. And then I'm like, oh, I don't know if this is like an allergic reaction. And eventually I went and laid down in my car and I realized it was a migraine.
Mm,
I get aura migraines, but usually I don't get, like, it was a little different than my norm.
mhm.
But I was like, oh, like I'm not gonna be able to drive home. And so
Oh,
like,
wow.
what's that gonna be like? So like I texted Joe and I'm like, so I might not be able to drive home. And like, but I just stopped everything and went and laid down in my car for a little while. And I did and it kind of transitioned to just being sparkly vision one eye. And I was able to drive home. I left early, drove during the daytime, so I didn't have to drive at night. And anyway, that sounds all super melodramatic, which makes me super uncomfortable. But I was like realizing I'm like then so yesterday I was like still kind of having the whole migrainey thing happen. And then when I just started cutting out and canceling things, like my headache went away. And I'm like, all
Oh.
right, there you go. Again, that body
The body keeps the
the
score, right?
body keeps a score. And like,
Mm,
so even though you're giving me like high five for like listening to my body, clearly I didn't move enough things to my don't do list. But now I have.
yeah.
And so now I have nothing but eat, sleep, and hang out with my family.
Nice.
And I don't even, yeah. So anyway, that was like a big blah,
No, I
blah story.
love it. I love it. What a great example of, the body just taking control there, being like, yeah, you're done. Like your head might think that you've got a million other things to do, but you're done. And I think that so much of our illness really could be prevented from just being better. Like we've had episodes on like watching our little
The
meters or our
dashboard
dashboard
lights.
lights going
Yes.
off. And I will also say that I'm in this real like relaxed philosophical mood this year. And this is the first year in a very long time I have not been doing Christmas anything. Like I used to have a
Yes.
tea company for many years, and before that, lodging and tourism. So it's always been like part of that cultural hustle, to
Of helping
go
other
do all
people
the
create
show.
their,
Yeah, wrapping all the little gifts and shipping them out and being very, like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna make sure it gets to the post office and just being real caught up in the hustle of the culture. And it feels amazing not to be there. Like that I can just be like, yeah, I've got tons of stuff I always have to do, but my to-do list is the not to-do list right now until definitely the new year. Like I'm just calling it. I'm not going to try. If I get things done, great. Like if I get inspired or something, but I'm not pushing at all. And that release, like, it's just an amazing gift. It's the biggest gift. It's the only gift I want at this time of year is to give myself that moment of like, let it go. And I think if there's any message of the solstice, it's like, yeah, like you said, there's no heroic strength left. You're at that last, you know, quarter mile of a very long year-long journey of the solar cycle. I mean, this is the end. It's when all the energy is waned out. We are tired, and nature sleeps right now. Everything in nature is resting, regenerating. And
and
what is darkness if not regenerative time? I mean, it's what we do when we sleep. It's why all of the ancients cultures had this traditions around solstice, and it was almost always about death, rebirth, regeneration, letting go, release. I mean, it's all those themes are all intertwined.
well,
And
and
I think
you think about it, like it's I just think we don't think enough about the fact that we sleep like a third or more of our life. And
mm,
because we're not conscious while we're sleeping, it's as though that we kind of forget about that. But it's like really because we kind of forget about that we somehow think that we don't I feel like we undervalue the importance of the full stop, the
Oh yeah,
full rest. I just and I yeah, I don't
clearly this country,
clearly.
I mean, if I think if you even think about nighttime these days, I mean, even think about just think about the idea of darkness. I think it I think like 1/3 of the world can't see the Milky Way at all. Like I think the light pollution is as such in so many like larger populated areas that 1/3 of the world doesn't see most of the stars. Like we are, first of all, inundated with light, artificial light all night long in
Yeah.
many, many areas. Not where I live, but in many places. And then you layer on that in the culture, it just feels like, night is kind of an interruption for day. You know what I mean? Like we don't treat
Yes,
it as
yes.
like, oh, it's the sacred portal we enter to like do our regenerative healing work or sacred prayer or whatever, dream work, shamanic, communion with this other symbolic realm. No, we think of it as something that gets it's interrupting the length of day that we need to go hustle and do our things, right?
Yes.
So I think that there's a complete dishonoring of darkness and its gifts. And in a lot of ways, there's it goes beyond dishonoring. It's more like just like fear and avoidance and screens and everything being lit up and lights all over the place, are just all part of that. Like we don't, and then so we get to this darkest point of the year, and it's interesting that we have a big hoopla that we're supposed to shop and bake and spend a lot of money and travel and be really social. And honestly, like what nature is obviously telling us to do is not do much of that, like to take this time to do
Yes.
a deep regenerative check-in, use this time because the darkness was always associated and is always been associated with this, yeah, like this womb, like potential, symbolic, interesting. I got really tripped out the other day. I was listening to Sharon Blackie's book Haggitude. Highly
Oh,
recommend.
I got it, but I haven't started listening to it
Such a
yet.
good book. And at one point, she kind of goes into this little stream of talk about the animus mundi, which I've heard through Francis Weller's work as well. He talks a lot. It's very Jungian. It kind of weaves through this idea that everything's connected, right? Like there's this world soul. So we are a part of a soul that kind of envelops all of life on the planet and maybe even the whole universe, where it's connected to all energy. And that within that, there's this realm. So you kind of touched on it a couple of times already, this idea that we have this world of our senses and we have the world of our thoughts. And our culture stays very much in that framework, like what we can see and experience and what we think about. I think therefore I am, right? This is like our whole kind of Western culture is coming from the idea of the Reformation of like it's language, it's thought, and really got moved away from the symbolic world, which shifted a lot of things like for humanity when that happened. And I actually even heard something interesting the other day is that the Catholic Mass, like the Catholic Church used to not be about the words because they said it in Latin. Most people that they were talking to didn't understand what the hell they were saying. It was more like they would just create a vibe, like they'd
Yeah,
create
yeah,
these
yeah.
churches and then all this music and you would just kind of come and like, and that was like their theory. Like, you don't need to know what we're saying. Just like pick up the
We
holy
created this.
vibe floating around you.
Yes,
Like that was
yes.
kind of their deal. And then the Protestants and everybody were like, no, no, no. Like people have to understand with their heads, like what this means. And that was a huge shift that kind of came with this Reformation. Anyway, kind of taking a little tangent too. It moved us away from this idea that there was this, that it was okay to just be surrounded by the symbolism of things and kind of soak it up. Like our soul understood what was being
Yes.
transmitted. We didn't
Yes.
need, our mind didn't need to be the intermediary there, and even we didn't even need to like touch it. Like and that really tracks back to a much like deeper belief that goes into all indigenous cultures, so that everything's alive, that we communicate with everything. And there is a world that is symbolic, that is dreams, is inspiration. It kind of ties back to I talk about creativity. It's where all these things come from, and it speaks to us in symbolic language. It's ideas, it's intuition, And it's definitely the whole realm of, I would say, shamanism. When they talk about, they do, they journey, they're
Yes.
not asleep, and yet
Right.
they are interacting with, it's fairies, it's all the mythology and stories around these other worlds, right? This world that kind of lays right on top of ours, and it's like right there. I would say it's ancestors, it's all of that. There's like this realm, and they kind of call it like the animus mundi. It's this living, vibrant, and it gives meaning to us. Like, we are not just our thoughts and our sensation. There's like this deeper meaning underlying everything.
I
It's
think it's like the
it's
lymphatic.
archetypal, right?
I think it's like the lymphatic system. It's like this,
Oh,
it's like our lymphatic system, which is like surrounding and infusing every cell in our body, but is like it's moved, it's essential to our health, and it's moved because we move, and it's it's like, yeah, I feel like that, I don't know,
I
when you're
love that.
describing it, it's like
No,
the
I love
gold,
it. That's great.
it's like the lymphatic system of the universe.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I could see that. Yeah. And we need to interact with it, right? Like, just like the
Yes,
lymphatic
yes,
system, it
yes,
needs to be activated.
yes.
And
If you're,
we can only do it by kind of moving, right? Like, the lymphatic system is not something you have to like engage. Like, you can't just think about it, right?
and
And it
if you're
doesn't just
too
do it.
stiff, then it
Yeah, and
gets
it doesn't
on.
do it like by itself. Like, and you need to move around like to activate your lymphatic system. So with that, I got all tied up with this idea of, if that's true, if we don't need to get caught up in the words. And I think that a lot of the divisions that we get into in our culture is because, like, no, you need to believe the words I'm saying. Like, you need to understand, believe, and act on these words, kind of back and forth. Oh, I believe
Mhm.
this in my head, blah, 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 back and forth. We spend 99.9% of our time there. However, I'm kind of getting more into this realm, and I feel like this is very solstice of just trying to drop out of that and experience like the deeper meaning behind things, like the deeper symbolism that's being represented. And Christmas and solstice and all this, such a perfect moment to do that, because we are surrounded by these really powerful ancient symbols, right? That, I mean,
Yeah.
represent the season. And I mean, I always go with the tree because that's like one of my favorites. And it's, people put them in their homes, they put lights on them, they decorate them, the whole thing. And so we're doing this really interesting, like
Really
deeply
ancient.
symbolic ancient act. And that ties totally into this idea of the world soul, because in almost every tradition, and I'm talking almost every one of them, including like Native American and Chinese and African, I mean, all over the world. So it's an archetypal thing when all the cultures have them. There's idea of this world tree. It's, and the tree has its roots in one realm,
Uh-huh.
its branches in the other, and it's kind of like exists as the archetypal tree in this other world, right? In this soul world. It's a gateway, it's a door. Shamanism talks very much about finding this tree and like going up and down to the upper realm or the lower realm. And so it's called the axis mundi. It's like the place that holds the polarity. And I think it's really interesting because, of course, it relates to our spine and our chakra system, and the
Mm.
idea of that we ground and we pull things up, and then we go to the upper realm and lower, like, back and forth between our own selves. Like, inspiration comes in, and then we ground it into action, and then actions happen, and then we take them into thought and inspiration back and forth. So it's kind of this, our spinal system connects to this tree of life. And I don't know, I just thought that was super cool. Like, and it's really like universal. And here we are as a culture, like it's all around us. And I think just being around it is activating something at a really deep level. And I think if we talk about it and try to like really, I don't know, get into it, it gets to be more powerful. Like, if you pay attention to it, like, am I making any sense?
You are absolutely making sense. So yes, because, okay, so what I was writing about this morning
Mhm.
was about how we don't belong to ourselves. We belong to each other.
Mhm.
We also belong to ourselves, but we belong to each other. And like part of our job is like the cells in our body signal each other constantly. And so it's like if it's a lung cell, it's like, hey, they're like singing the song of being a lung cell to each other, and they're all being lung cells. But if a cell has cancer, if it is cancering,
Mm,
it is not receiving signals in the same way. That's what's going on. And so
mm,
it loses it doesn't, it no longer has like programmed cell death. It only is like growing, growing, growing. It's not, it's like la 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 la. It's totally, it's disconnected from the song that all the
mm,
cells around it are singing. And
mm,
so that's part of what happens. That's like, it's like this, what happens when we're disconnected. And so what you're saying is that these, we're inundated with these ancient things, but they can be, it can be invisible to us, and people can get caught up in like, oh, I got it. Like, sorry, more cat drama here on the side. But
mm.
but like I think that what you're saying about that those symbols are feeding us and are reminding us of our interconnection. They are reminding us
Yes.
of who, like, what is it, what are we, where are we, who are we, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And that there is this, I'm going to say, portal energy around times like solstice, and that most ancient civilizations, most people who lived observing the stars and the movement of the sun knew this, that these were the time when the Northern Hemisphere is tipped, the furthest away from the sun, is a moment of extreme darkness. And that because darkness is regenerative and magical in their belief systems, then this was an opportunity to work with that energy, like in this really regenerative, healing, magical way. Like, this is, the gate is open, like real open. It's a long, blissful, expansive night. The stars are incredibly visible, and and it's like a still point too. Solstice means the sun stops, right? And it stops for 3 days, and before you see it move again physically, like if you were charting it. So you have this like stillness too, which is always, and then the light starts to return. So if you think of like the universe being born from this expanse of darkness, and then there's this creation of light, right? And everything explodes, and it's from that. This
Mhm.
solstice holds that space, or a womb,
Mhm.
before impregnation or whatever, that before life sparks, it's just this dark, fertile expanse. And that is this moment. So if we tune into these symbols that are being offered to us, here's the tree, that, the tree is in your home, maybe, or very, very much on a sweatshirt or wherever around you, outside for sure. Here is the evergreen tree, the tree of life. And its roots deep in the dark earth, and its branches reaching up to the potentials of enlightenment, let's say, like the light that would come from realization, or taking the shadow, things that we don't realize about ourselves or about our world, and bringing them into the light so we can see them, act on them, talk about them,
Mm.
actualize them. So it is creativity. It's the act of creation. And then I got spun out in this whole idea of virgin birth from the
Ah.
same theme, weaving through the same holiday time. Also incredibly common. Like, this is not a Christian story. This story goes back much older than Christianity's founding. And it's literally, again, from all over the world. I mean, if you were Aztec, or if you're in ancient China, or if you were in indigenous America, certainly the Egyptians, the most clear like predecessor probably to the Mary that we see holding her child is Isis and Horus, because she's also known as like the
And the
virgin.
Zoroastrians also had,
The
yeah.
Zoroastrians are like almost a cookie cutter. That was a real popular religion back then too, and it was like December 25th, and like the Mithra, which is their baby, who was born on December 25th, was very much shares a lot of the qualities that are written about Christ in the Bible. But if we think about these things as archetypal, and not about like, oh, it's my version versus your version, it's not about the words, right? Like, go back to the symbolism. Symbolism's all the same. And therefore there's really nothing to fight about. Like, we're all in agreement that these are archetypal, powerful imagery that we can draw wisdom from. It doesn't matter the name you give the child or the mother, or how that's not important. I think it's really powerful, especially where we are as this divisiveness and information age where everyone's trying to get their version of reality like codified as
Mm-hmm.
law, that we remember that. And I think solstice is a great time to really go back into that this is about this deeper healing symbology. So the virgin birth could also be related back to this idea that, energy moves through states of being, and it's not about the male female sexual act. It's about, you know, having an inspiration and bringing it to life. And, the idea of Shakti being one of the very ancient, like Hindu goddesses, her being really associated with Kundalini and the movement of from up from the earth and meeting this kind of divine Shiva energy. And then it gives birth to enlightenment, awareness, inspiration, life. And I think that's kind of where this idea is stemming from. So I think it's really cool. I used to be kind of triggered by the Christian thing, raised Catholic. And now I'm starting to get to the point where I think it's just really interesting because it's out there for our psyche to absorb. If we take away
Mm-hmm.
the words from it and we just look at the symbol that's there, it really does represent the season very well. This isn't about sexuality. Maybe that's Beltane, like the actual
Yeah.
sexual act going on in nature. This is more like the virgin birth, where it's not about the body as much as it is about the soul. Like there's energy moving and being born in the darkness that have nothing to do with the body just yet. There's
And
my deep
well,
solstice dive that I've been taking the last couple days. I've been really into it, but I love it. It's been really healing my relationship with the whole kind of Christian version of the holiday. And also I've just been like getting a lot of like deep kind of realizations through it.
well, and how else do they get in if you don't slow down, right?
Yes.
Like,
Yes, this is me not working. This is the stuff that comes to me while I'm
I
lazily
mean,
sitting in my hot tub or taking my dog for a long walk through the woods, listening to myths and, you know, people talking about this kind of stuff. So yeah, for sure.
it's like, yeah, um, I was realizing kind of recently, the more busy I get, the more I default to kind of like early entrainment kind of uh strategies, the puppets, shall we say. But
Mm-hmm.
I start apologizing. Like
Mm,
how much I apologize increases more and more. And I realize if I feel like rushed or like I'm trying to do, if I'm too busy, if I'm too stretched, I forget that I'm an infinite being
right.
and that I'm a freaking miracle. And like, look around us, there's like from first breath to last, like, wow, how
Yeah.
amazing that we get to be here. And here we
Yeah.
are. And it's like being here is the proof
That's
that
right.
you are worthy. like
Yeah.
like you're here, you're worthy. That's I mean it's just like I mean I don't know, and maybe
Not only are you worthy, I would take it like beyond that and say one of the other like layers of solstice that you could talk about is that we all have a part of the spark. So if
yeah.
there is an animus mundi, like the world soul, which is the world tree and all of these symbolisms, we have that. We
Yes.
have this inner sun that is glowing. And it is our time to kind of reconnect with that light inside of us and you know, look at it. What is it inspiring it? What is feeding it? What are we offering it? How can we bring it into being? How can we birth it? I mean, that's the virgin birth. That's how can we birth the light of our sun onto the world by shining who we are, our authentic gifts and self.
And when we do
Very much a
that,
part of this.
and that when we do that is the song. If you are
Mm,
being your light instead of like you talked about this, like covering your light up,
yep.
when you are being your light, you are being the radio to help other people be like, oh yeah, thanks for the reminder, here I am.
Yes. Yes. I think it's all about frequency. This is another thing I've been tripping out on lately. Drug free, by the way. This is just me thinking. But I heard somebody, and this usually when I say I hear people, it's usually on social media, flickering across my phone. But somebody was like frequency, vibration, repetition, they just kept saying these words over and over again. And I made me stop and really kind of be like, yeah, I think he's right. Like I think everything in the whole universe is about vibration and frequency. And he had like repetition, and I think in like kind of like your routine would be like what he was trying to talk about. But yes, I think the reason that the bells are rung at this time of year, there's another symbol like the ringing of the jingle bells and the ringing of bells, and is to remind us that sound is that is the first thing that echoed out in the universe was sound. That's the point of creation, the vibration of sound. And vibration made all, that is what matter is what we actually are, just a ball of vibration. We think we're solid, but we're not. We're light and sound, really, at a molecular level. And when we work those, if we get into that space and we understand that's what we're doing, then yeah, and it's connected to everybody else, then absolutely what you just said, we shine, we change frequency, we allow other people to tune and readjust and vibrate at a different frequency as well. And I would say the earth has frequency.
Yes.
And seasons have frequency.
Yes.
So solstice has a frequency. And it is about this, like this big darkness, eternal, universal, I think it's deeply creative, deeply regenerative vibration. And yeah, you can turn on your lights and put your headphones on and blast and ignore it. You can. You absolutely can. But why not use it? Like, why not tune into this, what's being offered everywhere in the culture, whether the culture realizes it or not? All the symbols are hung up to remind us that that's what's going on right now, that the gateway is open, the world tree is activated. We can tune in through our bodies and regenerate right now. This frequency is open. And I think I'm just going to just say this, having a migraine, what a great example of, like, especially because it's in your head, of like being, the frequency having to change. And when you start to,
you literally need to go hang out in the dark.
Exactly. You have to go in the darkness and you have to like get all the light gone, right? And you have to like change your, whatever the frequency is that the brain is not having, and any more of it's causing pain, to get back into a state of balance and health, where you can literally open your eyes and see without pain. So I just think I think a migraine is actually a great example of like of what the culture is, having around not being able to slow down, rest, and also just taking everything way too literally. I think we miss out on so much opportunity for regeneration and growth and love with each other as humans when we are stuck in the head of this word means this, it's just a symbol. It's just an idea. Take it and make it what you take it and use it for yourself, right?
I saw this thing about like, how do people respond in times of like really like crisis moments? And the first thing that people do is often is like, wait, that's not a gunshot. Surely not. Like, we deny it. And then the next thing you do is you check with the people that are around you. Did you just hear that? What does that mean? And then it's like you kind of come up with a consensus reality, and then you can take action. And when you think about like, how are people going to react in a crisis, we need that time to process of like, wait, are we in a different reality now?
Yes.
And then wait, are we in a different reality? Okay, now what do we do? And so
yes,
that like,
that's what we're doing. That's what
we're doing. And so it's like
through ritual, we do that as well. Like, is everybody understand? You know what I mean? Like, we bring it to a place where like, can we get on the same vibration here? Like, what's going on? Like, is this reality? Is this real? Where do we want to put our energy? Where do we want to, where does this song want to go? How do we change this song, this frequency, to feel like that we could all be on board with it? There's so many ways you can, work that with just sound and energetics alone. But I think you're right. Reality is completely subjective, right? Based on like, and it's so interesting that we would go and ask the next person, like, did you hear that
Yeah.
My sister and I were walking. When my sister was here, we were walking, and we kept thinking we heard somebody yelling for help. And I can't even, it was the weirdest social experiment because the two of us would stop and we'd listen and then be like, oh, is that voice saying help? And neither one of us were churning around and going back and doing anything about it. We just stood there and listened. And then like enough time would go by that we'd be like, no, I mean, I guess not. And we would walk and then we'd hear something like sounded kind of like, it was the funniest thing. Cause I realized as we were doing it that we were like we were creating this consensus. Like, should we take responsibility right now or should we just let it go and just like realize that no one's in, this is just us like projecting danger. And
Yeah.
I don't think it was. I think some guy was just yelling to his friend, but it was that moment of
The whole
is
check-in
danger
process.
present? Is it not? Are we responsible for it? Are we not? Like, and we were doing this negotiation in real time. Like, should we just go back to the car or should we actually go turn around and see if this guy's drowning or not? We decided to go back to the car, which was probably the right thing to do, honestly, because I don't think he really was. But yeah.
And you didn't see in the paper the next day that
no,
someone tragically drowned.
No,
So
we didn't. No, we didn't. But yes, but that was my reality of like, yeah, I'm just here. I am. Make my moral guidance is being like bounced off another person right now. Like, is this something what are we doing? It might have been different if I was alone. I have no idea. And also that thought comes in of like, well, then what do I do about it? Like, I don't know. Like, if there's some, like, what do we even do? And I think that it's a microcosm of we think about the culture in general. Like we are living in the Anthropocene in late stage capitalism, and we are in a very considerable moment in human history. So we have to just take stock of like that's where we are. There's lots of problems. There's lots of darkness around us in terms of like just not understanding how to help or where to shine our light or what to do. And yeah, I think that's another like way to work with Solstice is to really go into your own self and be like, what does my light want to do? What is from the darkness, not to like, oh no, it's not happening. It's not that bad. I just want to get drunk and not think about, you know what I mean? But like to really just be like, this is reality. This is where we are as a species. Now, how do we change the frequency? Like, how do we not buy into that and start like getting in the mix of it? Because that's what I'm not willing to do anymore. I feel like I just really, especially this time of year, I just can't watch media. I'm out. I'm tuned out. Like they don't have access to my inner world right now. I don't want to be in the frequency of that. I need to
because
create space for this other thought, these other deeper like realizations and things coming through.
Because like how do we actually solve problems? Like what we know about our brain so far is that when you are in fight and flight and all that, you don't have access to the part of your brain that can do creative problem solving. So it works better when you build on something that's working, or if you look at like, it's like you're looking for where those opportunities are. That's when it's like, oh, I can build, da 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 da. And so like you create something new out of a different frequency than the fear frequency, right?
Yeah.
And so like
I think I'm just gonna bring it back to
yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I just want to bring it back to you. It goes back to the not to-do list. Like it's really potent to stop thinking about what we can do and start like just letting like what can we not do? Like what do we drop?
Yes. So that was a great interruption.
Because I think I want to bring it full circle here, but I think that we're back to that point of like, yeah, what do we not do? We not freak out. We not spend our time, worrying about this, that, and the other thing. We not, you know what I mean? Like there's so many things we can let drop. We don't tune in to the endless discussions of, who's this or who's that, or what's, the correct wording for this versus that. And, the culture of how we need to understand how, what's important and what's not. There's so many things we cannot do. We don't have to buy into that.
Well, because
that's the way we create space for what hasn't manifested yet from the darkness of us, of this universal darkness of generation and creativity. There's things that want to come through, I think, but if it's too filled up with everything else of the culture, then we don't have the space.
Well, oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Like I haven't been writing this morning. Like I was like, oh my gosh, I have to write. I just wrote for 3 hours before this.
Mm,
And
nice.
like, and it's absolutely about being like, oh yeah, because it's like I know this about myself. I know what kind of like what mindset do I need to create in this way versus create in that way. And like for writing, I really need to have a buffer. And it's
Mm,
like if I don't build it in, then I just don't write for weeks or months. And
mm,
so, yeah, anyway, but yeah, so it's like, do I want to listen to the signals? If we are all like a radio that can receive and transmit, do
mm-hmm,
I want to tune into the radio station that tells me about that people are murderous, horrible, like, do I want to reinforce that aspect of humanity?
mm.
Or do I want, like, do I want to reinforce, and not in a Pollyanna way, which is not talking about Pollyanna. It's like,
No, like I said, it's not about
it's
like,
not, yeah, it's not
yeah,
about not
like
looking. It's
exactly. It's
about,
not about not looking. It's about looking very deeply.
did
It's
you,
the opposite.
do you know that Billy Bragg and the Mermaid Avenue, I don't know if it was in the first one or the second one, like Wilco and Billy Bragg did that album using Woody Guthrie lyrics.
Oh no, I don't.
So like he didn't write, I don't think he wrote music, like I don't think he could read like musical notation. So like he wrote down, he had lyrics, but all the melodies were in his head.
Mm,
And so when he passed away, there's thousands of written down,
mm,
which he would have had melodies for.
mm.
He needed help remembering the words, but he remembered the melodies. So like, but so they have no idea because they weren't recorded or anything. And
Wow.
so his daughter they have the archive asked them to put they've asked other people too, but to take some of these and put them to music. And so one of the songs is The Meanest Man. If it wasn't for the people I know, I'd be the meanest old man in this old town. I had tin
Mm.
can cats and burn down something, all the things that they would do, but it can't because he's surrounded by the people are so good. And that's what it is. So it's like
Mm,
taking time for yourself and then choosing to be with those that amplify your light, your
yes.
love.
Yes. Yes.
And that may or may not be your family,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And so, and I know that there are a lot of people that are
It might be not
lonesome.
people. I'm
It
just gonna
might
put
not be people.
it might
It
be
might not be
nature.
people.
It
It might
might
be
be
nature.
music, it might be writers, it might be woods, yeah, it might not be humans at all in different parts of your life. So
And the story that we are not connected, I think, makes it less, makes our kinship that is available to us less available because we tell ourselves it's not real. That feeling of kinship I feel
mm,
for my dog or my cat or this tree or that wild animal or that wild bird that I'm seeing or this river. But
mm,
when you open yourself up to the possibility that we are in kinship with all of everything on our planet, the good, the bad, the everything,
mm-hmm,
then you can experience that kinship. And it's, you know, clearly it's really nice when we can get it from our fellow humans. But if it's not available, that doesn't mean that kinship is not available to you.
absolutely. And I think that when we acknowledge that there is this other realm kind of energizing the realm that we see and touch, like when we acknowledge that and acknowledge that there's forces like that are leaning towards us even beyond what we
Yes.
are thinking about or touching, the absence of that really makes life pretty miserable. Like if you don't think there's any magic in the world or none of this has any meaning, now we're just down to like money and economy and like politics. Like it's fucking depressing. Sorry. Like if
Yes.
that's what this is about, like wow, I would get really depressed really quick. It
Yes.
is the fact that to me, no, that we are here as one unit, like we're experiencing this magical ability, yeah, to draw from this other realm and manifest it in our lives and share it with other people. That is
Yes.
creativity. That's what we're here to do. I think. I mean, I think we are little and we're channels. We are the little suns. We are the little balls of light, or the virgins giving birth to ourselves over and over again. Like, this is the whole thing that all this religions and yoga and everybody's talking about. This is what we're doing. We're pulling this energy up and we're manifesting it. And these times
Mm,
of darkness are that's like where the richest magic, that's the dark soil that hasn't sprouted the seed. It's the compost, it's the open night sky. It's like, it is the soul, and it's like, could turn into anything, could go any which way, and we all draw from that. We all have this potential, like, endless night sky, which is what they used. I guess they asked, like, at some point, like, a bunch of artists if they could imagine like what this would look like, and that's what the image they came up with was the night sky. It's like the most infinite thing they can think of, that we can draw from that endlessly. Like,
yeah.
there's no end to it. We can draw inspiration, ideas, healing, gifts, whatever it is we want. And it's just a culture that tells us that we can't, no, that's not real, that we don't have access to that. We're alone and we have to struggle and obey these rules and blah, blah, blah. And I think so. This is the heart of nurture culture for me, is to break down that
Mm.
lie and to ignite this much deeper relationships and use the symbols of the season to do it. It's so cool.
Yeah, I Tully just walked into the room, but I am going to tell a Tully story. So he he did some traveling to Europe last year for school, and people ask him, if I go to the US, what should I go see? What would you recommend that I see? And what he realized that he felt like was the most impactful thing that people could possibly see is to get to some place truly dark so that you could see
Mm.
the night sky. and
Oh,
and which is totally in line with what you were just saying.
yeah.
Like, it to think that there are people that spend their entire lives with so much light,
Yeah.
um man-made light, that you don't get that
Third of the
feeling,
planet, a third
you
of the
know
planet. Yeah.
and like, I know, like, I remember being a young person and like having it. It's an alt I mean, it's like so disorienting. You feel like you can fall into it when you're
Yes.
laying on the ground looking at a truly dark sky.
Yeah.
It's is a profound experience. And so, yeah, I just thought that was so brilliant that, like, what do you
Yeah.
recommend about North America? And it's like, get to one of the least populated areas and experience the dark sky.
Yeah. Yeah. That's beautiful. Let's leave it there.
Yeah.
It's
So
beautiful.
here we are in the darkness.
Yeah.
Open up.
And you can close your eyes and go to the darkness too, by the way. That's also the night sky. It's just a different version of it.
Oh, I love you so much,
I love
and
you so much. Happy solstice.
happy solstice.